Today we're at the southern tip of the Rainbow Mountains. We're at the Mountain Springs Trailhead. And what we're going to do is head up to the Rainbow Mountains upper Crest Ridgeline, which you can see on the horizon above. And we're going to take a left and head over to Hidden Peak. So you'll see a good portion of the southern stretch of the Rainbow Mountains upper Crest Ridgeline, plus the approach to Hidden Peak. Here we go. Okay, looking down on the trailhead, and then back up to show you the first waypoint in this adventure. And that waypoint is this communications tower ahead. And behind the communications tower, the actual trail to the upper Crest Ridgeline begins. You take a right, and then you ascend to the upper Crest Ridgeline. So that's the first stage of this adventure. Here we are at the communications tower, and now it's just a matter of squeezing through the left side of this gate ahead, and then we will see where the actual trail begins. Actually, it's a continuation of this road, but it gradually morphs into a trail before you get to the upper Crest Ridgeline, which is over to our right. So here we go through the gate, and yeah, and there's the tower. And now we're going to look down to where vehicle traffic ends and the foot traffic begins. In fact, if you're in a vehicle, you park down at the trailhead. So there's the upper Crest Ridgeline. So we're heading up. We'll top that ridge line somewhere about at this point. And it's there, we'll take a left on the ridge line, and you'll see the peaks, the southern peaks in the Rainbow Mountains today as we head toward Hidden Peak. Here's a quick look downward, just to see how quickly we ascended. There's the communications tower. Now you can see the view expanding. There's Potosi Mountain over here, the upper Crest Ridgeline, and you can see the exact point where the trail meets the upper Crest Ridgeline. Right up here. And then another element of the expansion of this view. Yeah, you can see the upper Crest Ridgeline stretching north. But take a look at this. Here is Mount Charleston, Griffith Peak, Mummy Mountain, and Harris Mountain. And there's more, but I'll show you from Charleston to the right. Here's Charleston, Charleston Peak. Griffith Peak, Harris Mountain, and let's see. Okay, yeah, Mummy Mountain between Harris and Griffith. there in the Mount Charleston wilderness. And then here is a look at the southern high point on the Wilson Ridgeline. There are adventures to all these destinations and a whole lot more on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. I've video documented the routes, and most of them are wilderness routes that will not have trails. Today we have a trail, which is different than what I'm used to. It's kind of nice for a change. Quick trail tip. I got to the trailhead and realized I'd left my trekking poles at home. But not to worry. These yucca stalks make awesome trekking poles. They are as light as a feather and as strong as steel. In fact, they're better than my actual trekking poles, maybe better than your trekking poles. And here is what I just created. And now I've got trekking poles better than the ones that I left at home. By the way, a quick note on the trekking poles. Choose last year's yucca stalks, fully dry, seeds fully developed. Strip the seeds, leave them at the base of the yucca plant where you found the stalk, so that the ground hasn't lost anything. It's got next year's seeds there, and then just break it to the length that you want. And it's the handle is really smooth. It's just amazing. And they're completely biodegradable, of course. And so if you lose them or you leave them in the wilderness, no problem. But I think I'm going to save these. They are so good. And as you can see, they are really abundant this time of year. By the way, this is the beginning of the third week of November. One of my favorite moments in this and other ridgeline approaches is what you see when you top the ridgeline. Look at this. Wow. Look at this expansive view opening up. There we're looking down into the southern Las Vegas Valley below us. But before that, there's Windy Peak. That's the third peak north of the southern boundary of the Rainbow Mountains. So this is peak number 3. The other two that you cannot see right now, you could probably see if you were up on this hill here, are Hollow Rock Peak and South Peak. In fact, I think I'm going to go up there just to give you a look at those peaks. And then here's the Las Vegas Valley. Okay, let's take a quick run up to the top of this hill to see those southern peaks. And there's Potosi Mountain to the right. And by the way, here's where we take a left and continue on the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, which skirts the upper area just west and above the Rainbow Mountains that are familiar to people. Like, now it goes all the way up. This trail will take you all the way up to Willow Spring in Red Rock Canyon. And you'll look down upon such famous mountains as Mount Wilson, Rainbow Mountain, and Bridge Mountain, which you can see from Red Rock Canyon. The only thing about this is the trail is very faint in places. There is a trail, it'll take you the whole way, but you really got to check it out, maybe take a section at a time. You can see on Las Vegas area trails where I did just that before you would attempt the entire trail from the southern end to the northern end, or vice versa. Because there, you don't try to do both in one day, meaning go all the way to the northern end and back to here, because the chances are you'll end up spending the night. It's just too long. And then here's the expansive view around us. And there's that communications tower below. So let's just take a quick jaunt up to the top of this hill over here, where we can see the two most southern Rainbow Mountains. In fact, there is the tip of Hollow Rock Peak, and you can see the hollow rock. There it is. Okay, let's head up here for a better look. Okay, here we are at the top of that hill with some better perspective. And here you can see the two southernmost peaks in the Rainbow Mountains. And you see a portion of South Peak, but let's look at Hollow Rock Peak first. That's the second peak to the north. And there you have it, Hollow Rock Peak. And then to the right, just south, is South Peak. And you can only see the tip of South Peak. Let's see if we can nail that. Got some glare on the screen here, but here we go. Yeah, you can see the tip of South Peak over the Hollow Rock Peak ridge. There it is. So there are the two southernmost peaks in the Rainbow Mountains. And then of course over here is Windy Peak. And that's a beautiful peak. That would be my first one to climb if you were in the Rainbow Mountains and you just wanted to climb one of the best peaks, Windy Peak. And it's aptly named, so you will have wind blowing you all over the place on that peak. And then looking down this hill, there is the point that we ascended to the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. And then you can see the ridgeline continuing to the north, and yeah, there are high points and low points, so it's not an easy flat trek across this ridgeline, but a nice trail all the way to Hidden Peak, which we will see in a bit. Okay, we've just covered this stretch on the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, and there is the high point from which we took a closer look at Hollow Rock Peak. Little detour we took, and then there's the ridge line that leads down to Hollow Rock Peak. There's Hollow Rock Peak, and behind it now you can see a little more clearly South Peak, kind of hiding behind Hollow Rock. And then what we have here is the long ridge line leading down to Windy Peak. So if you're going to Windy Peak when you see this pretty significant cairn ahead in the trail, that's where you're going to take a right and head down the ridge line to Windy Peak. Okay, and we're continuing. You can see the stretch of the ridge line as it winds around. We're going to continue on to the next high points, and just wanted to point out that bluff I call Landmark Bluff on the west side of lower level canyon. There it is. And that's my landmark for a lot of adventures, because I know no matter where I am in the Rainbow Mountains, I can see Landmark Bluff and I can always get back to it if I need to. And there are a couple adventures on Las Vegas area trails on Landmark Bluff, and one circles the entire bluff, another one circles around to the backside and summits right about at that point. So very beautiful, awesome view from Landmark Bluff. And I imagine there's another name for it, but I just call it Landmark Bluff because it is my landmark when I'm in the wilderness. And then there is the town of Mountain Spring. And it's always good to know the landmarks around you, because that is my navigation system. I don't use GPS, I don't use compass, although I'm learning to do that with Red Rock Search and Rescue. But no, my navigation for years has been just looking at the landmarks around me. And there, what I'm pointing at there is the trail and road, actually. It's Potassi Canyon Road heading around Potassi Mountain. So Potassi Canyon Road. So yeah, and then there's Potassi Mountain. There's the summit with its communication towers. So there you have it, number of landmarks. And now we continue onward along the Rainbow Mountains upper Crest Ridgeline. Okay, as we continue along the upper Ridgeline trail, you can see the path we have just covered. More views are opening up. There is a look at Windy Peak and its descent ridgeline to the right. And then, here's Global Peak. And here is a portion of Black Velvet Peak, at least from this direction. And believe it or not, the high point that you see there is not the summit. The summit, probably measured from below by rock climbers, is it has the summit box, and it's beyond this high point that you see. So we'll get a closer look at that. And then over in this direction, we're beginning to look at the area of Hidden Peak. And I think this is the summit of Hidden Peak. So we'll be seeing that soon. But another landmark along the way is a high point called Mountain Spring Summit. And it's a high point on the ridge line. So we'll look down from that summit on Hidden Peak and Black Velvet Peak and some of the others, and just take stock of the southern peaks of the Rainbow Mountains upper crest ridgeline. Here we are, another quick detour this time up to Mountain Spring Summit. Beautiful vantage point on the way to Hidden Peak. So from this vantage point, you see a number of things. First of all, I mentioned Black Velvet Peak. There it is. Now you can see both the summit bulbs. The higher one is not the true summit. The lower one is the true summit, probably because a lot of rock climbers, and these are extreme rock climbers, climb up the cliffs on the other side, and when they reach that lower summit, that's their summit. They're not interested in doing anything less than a cliff. Okay, and so let's take a look at the Rainbow Mountains from the southern stretch of the Rainbow Mountains, from south to north. I mean, from north to south, sorry. There you have Hidden Peak. So we'll see if we can get up there today. I don't take too many more detours. Black Velvet Peak. And by the way, all these peaks have adventures on Las Vegas area trails and have video documentation of those adventures and maps. Okay, here is Windy Peak. And that is a beautiful peak. I would do that first. There is Hollow Rock Peak, and you see that boulder on the left, that is the Hollow Rock. And then behind it, if you look carefully, you can see another ridge line. That is South Peak. Okay, that is the southern stretch of the Rainbow Mountains. And then going north, and this is a perspective that is not as familiar, but let's see if we can nail these. Here is, yeah, this is Indecision Peak, the first one. And then Mount Wilson, the highest peak. And then beyond that is Rainbow Mountain. And past Rainbow Mountain, you can barely see it, is Bridge Mountain. So there you have all the peaks of the Rainbow Mountains. And like I said, every peak has a video and map, interactive map on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. Okay, and then here we're looking at the Mount Charleston Wilderness, and then over to Level Canyon Landmark Bluff. And you can see why I call it Landmark Bluff. You can see it from so many places that in the event, you know, I've come up from Level Canyon through these ridges and washes up to Mount Wilson, Indecision Peak, Rainbow Mountain, and Bridge Mountain. But yeah, when you're climbing in this area and you're going up those ridges and canyons, you can always get to a high point and see Landmark Bluff, which leads you back to the entrance of Level Canyon, which is on the left side of that bluff. And then just to complete the 360-degree view. And here we are back at South Peak, Hollow Rock Peak, Windy Peak, Black Velvet Peak, and Hidden Peak. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see if we can get up to Hidden Peak. And by the way, there is kind of a summit box up here. it's actually a jar. It's interesting, the creativity climbers have when they have a little place that marks the summit. And here is a geological survey marker. And believe it or not, this is the first time I've seen on a peak 2 survey markers. Let's go around this side. I'll study these later to see why there are 2 different markers. There's the second marker. Okay, and there you see them both together. So I'll figure out why there are 2. Okay, let's keep going. I'm burning up the time that I'm going to need to head up Hidden Peak. The Upper Crest Ridgeline Trail is a little less traveled, more rocky, twists and turns after Mountain Spring Summit, in part because a lot of people just go up to that summit and not as many people come down here to make the trail a little more traveled. So what we're going to do is, you can see some high points there. The trail circles around the left side of that ridge and then is going to descend to the sandstone area of the Hidden Peak, and then on up to the peak itself. And you see some peaks behind Hidden Peak. Those are monument peaks, and I think they're numbered 1 and 2, and I think there's up to 4 of them. So our goal is to see if we can get up to Hidden Peak right here. So we'll see if time permits and the route is not too crazy. Haven't been there before. Okay, continuing onward. The combination of gray limestone and the colorful sandstone below is so beautiful here. Just had to stop at this point just to take a look at the ridge line and the beautiful terrain we have just crossed and are heading toward. And we need to circle around this huge formation. And wow, you want to see something goes straight down? Yeah. And it looks like somebody has come up this from below, because I see kind of a trail. Oh boy. No, I would not do that. Okay, let's continue on around this next limestone peninsula. Okay, we've reached pretty much the edge of the trail, southern portion of the trail that leads along the Upper Crest Ridgeline. And yeah, what you need to do at this point is the trail heads downward, and you can see where it continues down around another corner down here. And so I guess this isn't the very edge, but at that corner, yeah, you're going to head down toward Hidden Peak. And also there will be another portion of the trail that is fairly complicated, but yes, it will lead further north on the Upper Crest Ridgeline. I think here is a portion of that trail continuing forward. Yeah, you can see a lot of glare on the screen here, but I think that there is a portion of that trail visible there, continuing north toward the next height, which is Indecision Peak. And you see Mount Wilson in the background. Okay, let's begin to circle around and head downward. We'll get better pictures of all these. Here's a better shot of the Upper Crest Ridgeline Trail, continuing, winding around the corner, and then, yes, it will take a plunge down to Hidden Peak. And then, yes, another view of Hidden Peak. Then over to Indecision, not Indecision, over to Black Velvet Peak. And then some of the sandstone we have been skirting here as the trail descends. Okay, let's continue to that bend in the trail there where it begins to descend. We'll see a lot of cool things there. Well, I almost missed it. Here is a cool arch. You got to look back. You'll see it on the way back, but here's a view looking back as I was heading north. Wow, that is incredible. And just give you perspective on the view here. Yeah, I came to this vantage point up here to look at that arch. And yeah, as you can see, there is not a lot of room to get here, and definitely no soft landings if you should lose your footing. Okay, onward. Another view of the arch with a little less glare. Pretty amazing how something like this could have been formed. And that it's hidden up here. And here's the last bend in the trail before it takes a serious dive down to Hidden Peak. Just wanted to show you a great view of a stand of ponderosa pine called Little Zion, reminiscent of Zion National Park, Utah. Very, very beautiful. You can descend to Little Zion from up on this trail, and a lot of people come to this point, and then a little further on there's a trail that'll take you down to Little Zion. Okay, let's continue on. Here's an even better perspective on Little Zion. And then beyond, you can see Indecision Peak and the ridge leading up to the high point above Indecision Peak. Yeah, right there. By the way, that high point is on the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline heading north. And there, beyond Indecision Peak, is Mount Wilson. And then over to the Calico Hills in Red Rock Canyon, La Madre Mountain to the right on the horizon. I should say the left. Okay. Down here is Sandstone Peak, Sandstone Canyon down there. And then over to Hidden Peak, right up there. Okay, let's keep heading in that direction. You've got to catch the point where the trail continues to angle downward toward Little Zion, and then just top this ridge here, put you back on track for Hidden Peak, which is right there. So yeah, it's not real obvious. You can see where the sandstone begins. That's the famous Keystone Thrust. The escarpment is on the far side, on the sandstone side, and the limestone Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline is on this side. It's the west side, the sandstone on the east side. And you can see a distinctive line there. Keystone Thrust Fault System. I see another thing from here, kind of interesting. When we went to Indecision Peak over here, on the return trip, we headed down through canyons. I ended up at that golden high point from which you can descend toward the left and you get to the summit, the high upper end of Salt Grass Road from Lovell Canyon. So just a little factoid there. And yeah, Indecision Peak, Mount Wilson in the background. And then down here, Sandstone Peak, the Little Zion stand of ponderosa pines. Well, you've just got to be down there to really appreciate the beauty of that place. And then we're up here in the pinyon pines. There are some ponderosas up here too. So I'm going to go ahead and angle over in this direction. I may have actually missed the trail, if there is a trail that goes to Hidden Peak, but we'll see if we can get back on track. Well, that actually wasn't too bad. You can see a cairn here. I went down a little further on the trail than maybe I could have. I don't know. But when I angled over off the Little Zion Trail, somewhere over that ridge there in the foreground, I ended up on a trail on what looks like the Hidden Peak Trail. And there's Hidden Peak. So I think by doing this, we escaped some pretty steep limestone, loose rock downhills. Okay, so now looks like we're on a trail. Here we go. And what we'll do on the way back, we'll see if we can go back by a main trail. It looks like there might be a trail descending from this ridgeline. I don't see how it could be a better choice than the one we ended up taking, but yeah, we'll explore a little bit on the way back. But let's continue heading toward Hidden Peak. Well, I don't think I want to be on this dead-end ledge, but I can see that if I backtrack a little bit, navigate to that next ridge line, that ridge line will descend to this low point and then reascend and start the path upward toward Hidden Peak. So let's go ahead and take it. Okay, I backtracked from that ledge you see over here with the nice bonsai ponderosa pine, and then an easy traverse across this area. And actually, it almost looks like I'm on a little trail. This may be the main trail, we don't know. But yeah, it continues forward. And remember, we want to get to that descent point, that little saddle at the base of the hidden peak. And boy, I'm looking at a potential crack right here where the trees are that will hopefully take us to the summit. But then you could go a little further to the left and then head on up. So there are a few different ways I think you can get to the summit. We'll find out. Okay, the question, where do we descend to that saddle we saw a moment ago? And as I cross this sandstone area, now we see some cairns. There's one, and then in the forward direction, here's another. So now let's see if these cairns are going to help us get down to that saddle between where we're standing and Hidden Peak. And by the way, the peaks in the background, monument peaks, I think that's why this is called Hidden Peak, because from below, they're hiding this peak. So yeah, another little factoid. Okay, the nice cairns say head down this little channel, which we are doing now. There you can see another cairn. And it looks like we are indeed descending toward that saddle, and there's another cairn ahead. So hopefully it's a matter now of following the cairns, connecting the dots. Let's go. Continuing to follow the cairns as we descend toward that saddle. Here's one, and then a next one over here. So we just take a little at a time. When you look at the big picture, yeah, it looks like, whoa, you're going over the edge of a ledge. But let's trust the cairns for now and just see where they lead us. Okay, the cairns continuing to direct us downward. Here's another one. And then another one ahead. So yeah, this is what it's like when you're following cairns. And usually when you cross the limestone onto the sandstone, since the sandstone doesn't leave impressions or a trail like the limestone, you'll begin to find cairns if it's a popular route. And then there's Hidden Peak. Okay, around the next corner, here's another cairn. And whoa, that cairn looks like it's leading us over a ledge, but yeah, we'll check it out and see. You always want to wait till you get there. And then there is Hidden Peak. We're descending to that saddle we saw. Okay, well, this little cairn that looked like it was leading us over the edge of eternity is actually pointing toward what looks like a ramp that will lead down to the saddle. Let's find out. Yes, indeed. Here's the ramp. And you can see how it's continuing down. And it looks like it's going to take us down to that saddle. Note to self, look back often, because you want to know how to get your way out of this area and back to where you started. So yeah, but there it is, down to the saddle. And here are the cairns beckoning us onward and leading down pretty nicely to that saddle, from which it looks like there is a ramp on the left side of the summit, and then perhaps a crack that will lead up to the summit. We'll find out. But let's get down to the saddle. And by the way, yeah, by way of looking back, when I get back to this point, I know that here is the ramp that's going to take me back up to where I can connect with the ridge that's going to lead up to the upper Crest Ridgeline again. So down we go. Still following the cairns, and here we are on the last stretch to the saddle below. So that was not hard at all. And then looking up, there's the direction we just came from. There's that ramp we do not want to forget. And here is a beautiful bonsai pinyon pine. Okay, let's continue. The cairns led us down this nice little ramp. It is so incredibly beautiful here. Ponderosa pines, manzanita. Okay, another cairn. And now we're actually heading upward toward the summit. Let's see if it is a nice pathway. Cairns don't fail me now. There's another cairn. And coming up from that saddle where you see the ponderosa pines, beautiful little spot. And then up here is the ramp that I took getting down off that ledge. Over here, yeah, I think it was somewhere either here or over here where I came to the edge of a ledge and backtracked and then found the cairn route. Here's our next cairn, and heading up this little ramp that we saw from above. Okay, continuing up this ramp, watching carefully for where the cairns are going to tell us, lead us to the ascent point. And I think we found it. There's a cairn on the ramp and another cairn up here. So that looks like our ascent point. Let's head up this direction and see what happens. And the cairns are leading us up. This natural crack that we saw from above when we were way over, oh, where were we? Oh, wow, look at this. This is just amazing. Yeah, we were up on this ledge looking across where we first saw the saddle and imagine the ramp descent ascent point, which we have just turned on. And now let's continue up this way. Continuing up this nice little channel, which looks like it could be the final approach to the summit. Who knows? Could be a false summit, more cairns. But yeah, look at that. Leads right up in this direction. Let's take it. Onward and upward. It's a nice little channel. Continuing up the channel. And could it be that we are just below the summit? Wouldn't that be nice? We'll find out. Let's head up in this direction. By the way, yeah, I don't see cairns anymore, so I guess they're assuming that by the time you get this far, you don't need cairns. Let's hope. Well, they were right. Easy walk to the summit from that last spot we were at. And by the way, here's another cairn. We didn't come up this way, but I guess we could have. There is the channel we came up. We want to remember where that is because, yes, that channel definitely is the main way down. And look at this. The summit of Hidden Peak. Very beautiful summit. Wow, look at this. Wow, let's continue on up to the cairn pile ahead, which I think marks the absolute summit. From there we should be able to look over and see Monument Peaks, both of them, 2 out of the 4. And here we are, the summit of Hidden Peak. There's the summit box. And then, yes, looking across to Monument Peaks. And the question of where the next stretch would be if you were going to Monument Peak is a pretty live question at this point. But since we're not going there, let's just enjoy being on the summit of Hidden Peak, which was our goal. And there's Black Velvet Peak. You can see the higher one on the right, the lower one on the left, which is the actual summit, and then Windy Peak, and then the other peaks south are hidden at this point. But there's the stretch of the Rainbow Mountains upper Crest Ridgeline. There's that golden hill directly above the upper end of Saltgrass Road in Level Canyon. And you can see the Indecision Peak adventure to where we stood on that grassy hill. And then looking in this direction, yeah, you can see Indecision Peak in the foreground. There it is. And just behind it, if you can make out the difference between the two, is Mount Wilson. And then over here is Rainbow Mountain. And I think over Rainbow Mountain, you might be able to see that red, I mean that sandy colored peak beyond. I believe that that is Bridge Mountain. And then here is the Mount Charleston Wilderness. And you can see here's Mummy Mountain. And over to the right, the Wilson Ridge, that green treed high point is actually what I call the southern high point on the Wilson Ridge. And then just to the, let's go back there. Yeah, and just to the left is Harris Mountain. And then we go further and we see, yeah, let's see, Harris Mountain. That might be Mummy Mountain. and to the left of that, I believe that's Griffith Peak, and then Charleston Peak. Rainbow Mountain's upper crest ridgeline. It's getting windy and cold up here. We won't stay up here very long. And then circling around, yeah, here's Potosi Mountain. Like I said, these are my GPS. Here's an artful little tree. And then we're looking upon the Las Vegas Valley behind Monument Peak. And there it is. There's the strip. As long as we're looking at everything here. Here are the Calico Hills. Behind them, Gray Cap Ridge, that second ridge line of Calico, red and cream. And then behind that, Damsel Peak. And then to the left of Damsel Peak, the La Madre Ridge line. And then we're back to Mount Wilson, Indecision Peak. So, yeah, one more thing I'll show you is that pointy peak in the distance is Gas Peak at the upper end of the Las Vegas Valley, above the upper end of Decatur Boulevard. So there you have it. It's always wonderful to be on a summit, and definitely for the first time. But as I mentioned, it's getting cold. The wind is blowing. I bet it's below 30 degrees. We've got about 2.5 hours of light left today, so I need to hightail it back so I can be off the Sandstone before dark, and then along the upper crest ridge line. and back home, hopefully before dark. We'll see. But yeah, here we are at the summit of Hidden Peak. Beautiful place.